Hello everyone, this is Sharon with Cozy Junk Studio. We are going to be doing some stamping today. You all really liked the stamping video that I put out last week and you requested more simple stamping videos, so let's get on to the video. Starting out, we are going to be using this new IOD 2023 spring release of the Antiquity stamp. This is a really cute stamp set and we're going to be using it on a basket that I picked up on one of my recent hauls. This basket, I love the way it looks. It has a little bit of an industrial vibe to me, which is almost as favorite as vintage for me. I love the industrial style. So we're going to be using the DIY little black dress to put a thin coat on here, let that dry, and then seal it up with some DIY liquid patina. I am going to be using my heat gun to dry in between coats as I do these projects just to speed them up. And usually I don't video this, but I am videoing it so you guys can see that I do speed up the process. This will be linked in my Amazon affiliate links below if you are interested in a heat gun. Now, when you stamp this, I always use a brayer. Well, not always, but I like to use a brayer, roll it on, and then when you put your stamp down, you want to make sure that you are holding it in the center and tapping all around the stamp, not pressing real hard. That way you get a smooth and crisp image. I did use the IOD white ink in the bottle for this, if I did not mention that. Now that our stamp is dry and our liquid patina is dry, I am going to dry brush around just on the wood and the handle. Well, I actually think I dry brush quite all over. And so I take a wet wipe to wipe back if I get too much dry brushing because I just want a hint of it. Now we are going to go ahead and add some liquid patina to this, and this piece will be finished. Our next piece is going to be this wall basket, and I'm going to go ahead and dry brush a coat, not quite full coverage, but almost full coverage of the Prairie Gray, and use this DIY Dark and Decrepit. We're going to do the same. We're going to brush over this, not quite a full coverage coat, but it really changes up this Prairie Gray. You still get the Prairie Gray showing through, and that is just, I don't know, the effect that it gives is just so cool. So what I want to do is make a small sign for the front of this. I thought about using fabric. I know a lot of people use that, and I have used it before myself, but I'm just using these really thin pieces of wood from the Crafter Square. You get so many in a box or in a bag, and I'm just using my X-Acto knife to cut the blade, and it's not straight. That's fine. We're just going to go ahead and sand that to make it look straight once we get it cut. Now that we've got this cut, it just broke off very easy, and I'm going to use some scissors actually to trim the very end to get some of those extra pieces and then start sanding to make it more even. I go ahead and use my little zip sander to sand all the edges and around the corners just a tad, and to bevel the top of the piece of wood so that it looks like it's finished instead of just a square piece of wood. It's very kind of flatter at the edges towards the corners, that kind of round. We are going to paint this little sign with vintage linen DIY paint. Give it a couple coats, or I think actually it took only one big coat or one thick coat to kind of blend in with the whole color scheme of the basket. I felt like this vintage linen was the great color for that. I think that this is vintage linen. If it's not, then it is beadboard. I go ahead and give this a coat of liquid patina to seal this in because I'm going to be stamping on this, and I have found that stamping straight on chalk paint is not bad, but if you want it to be a little bit crisper and not reactivate that chalk paint or blend in too much on that dry chalk paint, the liquid patina will give it a good seal to stamp onto. I'm going to take my Crocodile, which it punches through holes through all kinds of different materials, and it punches straight through this wood. I'm going to use that to put some grommets in to hold my sign on. Now you don't have to do this. You can use a nail and a hammer and just nail through and then pull back out to make your holes. There's lots of different ways, a little hand drill, you know, different things. But I just have this tool and I use it for lots of things. And we're going to use some grommets, so I'm going to show you that too. So I decided that my sign looked a little too fresh, so I'm going to take some of that dark and decrepit and go around the edges of this and make it look a little aged. And I think I also brush a little bit across the front of it as well. I'm going to be using some silver grommets that have a long stem on the back of them or base so that it will go through the wood and come out the other side. And that is how, once you put pressure from this little tool, it smashes the back of that, almost makes it look like a flower. It just spreads it out, and that's what holds this grommet in place. Okay, so before we put our sign on, I'm going to go ahead and white wax this basket. I know that I did the dark and decrepit, but that was to give it a little bit of a deeper tone. And now we're going to give it a white tone. And once we wipe this back, the white in the cracks, it just comes together so beautifully. I love white wax. I've already said that more than once in my videos. This is a personal preference, so you use it, you do you. Now we are moving to the stamping part for our little sign that's going on the front of this. I thought this would make an adorable mail holder because it's quite large, and I don't know about you all, but I let my mail stack up before I do anything about it. So I made sure that someone could hang this right on the wall when they walk in and toss their mail in it. So we're just going to use the lowercase of this typesetting stamp by IOD and stamp right on that. We're going to be using the IOD ink in stone gray, and I like to put it out on a piece of paper and roll it and then roll it on my stamp. You can do this different ways, but this is just the way that I like to. With this particular stamp, I'm going to go ahead and stamp this off on some white paper just to give me an idea of what it's going to look like with this gray color compared to my piece. You don't have to do this. I just like to do a sample run before I do the real thing. After I did this, I decided that I wanted the letters a little closer together to give more space or more negative space on my sign. After, like I said, you can see there, it looked good on the paper, but I decided for the plaque it needed to be closer together to give more negative space. So that is a good reason to pre-stamp on something that is not your final project. Now that this is dry, we'll go ahead and add another coat just to seal in that ink. I don't think this is necessary, but I am going to put it on there anyways just to give it a longer life. Now staying with the whole white wax theme, I'm going to go ahead and white wax this sign and wipe that back as well. To attach this sign, I am going to use my X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to kind of bore out some holes, and I'm going to bore out 2 holes per hole, because what I'm going to do is use some twine to feed through from the back like a U shape. In other words, I'm going to feed one end of the twine through the top hole and the second end of the twine through the bottom hole. Tie those together or just put them together and feed them through the single grommet hole. I hope that makes sense. Now once we pull that through the grommet hole, I'm going to tie several knots, and that is what's going to hold the sign on. There are many different ways you can attach this sign. I also add some glue, some quick and thick glue, Tite Bond, behind the sign to help with a more permanent hold. So if it does get pulled on, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to pull the knots that I made in front of each grommet off. Once I make several knots on the front of this, I thought about leaving a couple little edges of the twine, but I went ahead and cut it all the way down to the knot. So it just looks like it's the end of something versus just a knot tied with strings hanging off of it. Also, I end up taking some glue and putting on the knots, and then I turn around and take some of that same prairie gray, I think, or it may have been the old school, to make the knots almost look like metal. You'll see. After I put the holes through the back, well, through the front and into the back of this basket, it did leave little cracks in the basket where the twine comes through. Now, it is inside the basket. You don't have to do this, but what I decided to do was to get some of this gray felt and put some Tite Bond and hot glue on it and put on the back of each side where I bored those little holes and put that twine, so it would just give it more of a finished look. But you do not have to do this. Some people do, that does not bother them. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to use my pliers and I'm going to pull as tight as I can on these knots with that plier before I add this glue to it. I don't think I show where I put the gray paint on those little knots, but you will see it in the photos at the end of this video, so stay tuned for those. What I'm doing here is taking a baby wipe and going back and wiping back some of that wax to bring some of the original color of the basket as well as the other layers back through, and I love how this turned out. You all let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this one? Our next project is this cute little crate that has 2 little glass bottles in it. Now I picked this up, I think for $2.99 or $3.99. It was originally only $5, but you all, I knew that I could just upcycle this to something cute and, you know, make a few dollars off of it. It's just my style, and I love repurposing or upcycling or adding cute things to things. That is my style. We're going to make another little sign just like we did with the first one. I won't bore you with the steps. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment below. We're going to make that sign because this is going to be something that people can put flowers in, or they can propagate flowers or plants in. We use the same steps and we are using the same paint for that little sign, and we're going to attach it to the front of this crate. Before we do that, we're going to go ahead and dry brush some of this paint on there as well to give it a little bit more of an aged look or a distressed look. Now our sign is already done like we did the last one, but I thought I would use some of this DIY old and gray barnwood patina. This is gives it an instant weathered wood look. I'm using it just to kind of weather this up and make it blend in a little bit more with this crate. We are going to be using the IOD letterpress stamp set for this little crate because we need some really tiny letters that will be skinny and get close together for this tiny little plate that we made for the front of this crate. We are going to be making the word bloom, so I will only have one O, and what I did was I went ahead and spelled out the whole word bloom, and for my second O, I just used a Q to space the blank that I needed for the other O, if that makes sense. I didn't want to guess at what the size, and the O and the Q were almost the same size, which I see now looking at the screen that there actually is a 0 that is identical to the O, so I could have used that. Oh well, it's so enlightening watching these videos. I'm going to be using the same stone gray for my ink color and rolling it on my letters. Now IOD do have blank stamp pads that you can add your ink to, and I have a white one, I have a black one, and I even have another blank one, and I just haven't used them to do this. I do sometimes, but recently I've just been using the roller method. I decided the capital letters on this bloom just looked a little bit too perfect or blocky, so I took my little zip sander and distressed them back some. To attach this, we're going to use Tite Bond Quick and Thick, and I'm going to just make sure I only get it on the pieces of the crate so that it doesn't seep too much through the back and make it a mess or just have a big blob back there. So I'm just making sure that I get it where it needs to be. Once I get it where I want it to be, I'm going to add a couple of these little clips to just hold it in place until it gets a little bit of tacky or dry to stay in place, and I'm able to see where I really want it to be. I'm just going to go ahead and apologize because I do not have the rest of the footage after this for this project. I'm taking a piece of this French writing fabric. I think it's French. I'm going to tie one piece on one of the bottles and stamp a rose on this little tag that's sitting there. I paint it the same DIY beadboard color, I think, and then stamp a rose on it. And because of that, you're going to get a sneak peek of the photo of this project coming up. What do you all think of this project? Let me know in the comments below. Our next project is just a Dollar Tree jar. I bought a lot of these. Once I get to do my studio tour, you'll see what I did with them. And I had a few left over, and I thought that this would make a great piece to stamp this little, I think it's Miss Kitty's baking powder, because I thought if someone really wanted to use this as a baking powder jar, they could. So I wanted to put that stamp on something that baking powder could be put in. Because this jar is clear, I'm going to take some of this, it's either DIY black velvet or little black dress, and I am just going to freehand a rectangle on this. I made sure that my little Miss Kitty stamp laying over there to the left was large enough for this piece, and I kind of eyeballed of what size rectangle that I needed. Now, your first coat on glass is going to look, not great, but you put a couple coats on there and it just looks, it's so easy. This is this is such an easy project to stamp on glass. So anyways, I go ahead and I get all my coats on and I get them dry. I'm going to seal it with liquid patina, which again, you could use Mod Podge. And I do have some questions about that, and I'm just going to go ahead and address the Mod Podge one in this video. And her name is Dee Patton. I hope, Dee, that you don't mind that I am answering this question on here, and I will address the other questions you have as well real soon. So Mod Podge is a great product. It does a lot of things. You can use it for transferring images. You can use it for glue. You can use it as a clear coat. You can use it for decoupage, which is the main thing I always heard it was for. Because it is so much like glue, you can use it to crackle under your paint. It is thicker, much thicker than liquid patina. You can add water to it and thin it down. I'm not sure if that decreases the effectiveness of the sealer. Maybe not, because it is so very thick. Another thing with Mod Podge is it comes in many different forms. You can get it in a sprayable form, I'm pretty sure. You can get it in the just the jars. It also comes in gloss, satin, flat or matte. They have outdoor Mod Podge for outdoor sealer. There is also dishwasher safe Mod Podge. Regarding liquid patina, it is a thinner product. It is a different product. It's water-based. It's all natural. It comes in one large jar or jars. It's not, it doesn't come in other forms. It has one finish, which is a satin to a little bit of a shine. It's very thin, easy to use. It dries really, really quick compared to Mod Podge. Mod Podge takes a long time to dry. Mod Podge is more glue-like and sticky when you use it. So the difference for me is liquid patina can do a few things that Mod Podge can do, such as decoupage, sealing, possibly transferring images, and it can do those things so much better and so much easier. So that's why I use liquid patina. A lot of the things that Mod Podge does that liquid patina doesn't do, I don't really use it for that. But I keep it in my studio in case I need it for that. So that's why I like to purchase liquid patina and have it in my studio. And it's just a great product. Even though it is more expensive, you get a lot and it goes a long way for the price. If anyone else watching this video has experience with both of these products, comment below and let me know what your thoughts are, and also let other viewers know. I wanted to answer the question because I'm sure if one person is asking that, there may be more people out there asking or wanting to ask that or wanting to know that as well. So now we're going to put our little Miss Kitty stamp on here, and I'm going to do how I always do. I'm going to get it centered. I'm going to hold it with one finger or part of my hand and stamp all around it, pressing all around it until I get all of the image on the jar. Just a reminder, I use the IOD white ink for this stamp and then my roller. And isn't that the cutest little jar? Let me know in the comments below. Do you like that one? Our next project is this little box that I got for 99 cents. I was going to stamp straight on the box with one of these traditional pot stamps from IOD. And when I did, it just looked so blurry and I didn't really like it. I should have sealed it before I did this. Because the wood was so dry, the stamp was not crisp enough and clear, even though I do like things distressed and I don't mind it if it looked a little distressed, but it just looked, I just didn't like the way it looked. So you'll see that coming up. What happened was the flowers really bled into like blobs, and then the words at the top you couldn't even read. It didn't look distressed. It just looked bad, like bad stamping. So what I did was I went through my paint and found one that I knew I could just dry brush on that would be similar to the original color of the box. And that happened to be Fusion in the color Little Lamb. I recently purchased some Fusion paint and I really like it. I was told I would love it and I do. So I'm going to use this. It seemed like the similar color to the original box. Right now you're looking at where I tried to wipe that off and it's still kind of wet. I get that dry with my dryer and then I put a little bit of heavier coat on where I stamped, and then on the rest of it I just dry brushed more because I'm going to stamp back on this same side, and that's why I wanted a little bit more paint. Once I got that dry brushed on there, where it was so dry, it kind of blotched the paint, and I wanted to take a baby wipe and smooth it out to blend it in more. Since Fusion has a sealer already in it, I didn't seal the paint before I'm stamping on it, and I'm using the IOD ink and just the roller method and stamping on it. I'm going to go ahead and seal it up with the liquid patina, the whole box, even though the Fusion does have its own sealer. I wanted to add that coat all around, and I love how this turned out. I think these can be used in many different types of decor, such as French country, industrial, farmhouse, rustic, or just to blend in with any kind of eclectic style. Let me know in the comments below if you like this one. Now on to the photos. Here is our cute little basket. I just stuffed some nests and a flower in that. Wouldn't that make a cute little egg basket? Here is our little mail holder, well, medium-sized mail holder. Here is our little jars to put cut off flowers or to propagate anything in, such as plants. Here is our little box that can hold all kinds of trinkets. Here is our Miss Priss baking powder jar. Oh, this thing is so cute. And here is our vignette. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below. Give it a like, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.